Hey guys, in this week's episode, we are going to be talking about The Northman. But before that, we are going to talk Better Call Saul Season 6, Woohoo! Outer Range, and closing wrap-up thoughts on Severance. So, join us.
Chris clearly likes one of those better than the other.
Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me as always is a man who was surprised that it wasn't the Northman Love and Thunder. How are you doing today, Mike?
Good. I just kept waiting for Chris Hemsworth to pop out and tell me everything was going to be okay in this movie, but
big disappointment. It's like one star off right for that. Also with us is a man who thought the Northman meant that he was a guy from Canada. I didn't try to say that before. Justin, how disappointed were you that the guy wasn't from Canada?
I'm pretty disappointed. I mean, I expected a lot of that really natural Canadian dialogue, that well-researched Canadian dialect from Robert Edgars, a lot of A's and sorries and, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, Canadians are a lot nicer.
Yeah. Way to let us down, Eggers.
That's his next film. Again. Should be a Canadian.
Yeah. Canadian folk horror.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You're right, Chris. That was a very strong intro joke.
Yeah.
Some of your finest work.
I know. Thank you. If you need me for your podcast, just write in. I can help out.
Northman to me means
this is your
someone
first time
from Dallas.
Listening. What?
Northman to me means someone from Dallas.
Oh my.
I'm your
Dallas,
man.
Texas.
Yeah. Because that's north.
All right. I'm moving on with the thing now. Let me move on. If this is your first time listening, normally, we like to start off every episode in a section called News on the March, where we talk about film, TV news, or just the movies and TV that we have been watching. Then we move into our feature review, and like I said at the top of the show, this week we'll be discussing The Northman.
And here on the Casual Cinecast, every other week, or just about every other week, depending on how much cool stuff is coming out to talk about in theaters, we like to put out a Casually Criterion episode. In these episodes, listeners choose a film from the Criterion Collection for us to review by voting in a poll that we put out on our Twitter account. So check out our next Criterion poll. Also check out our last Criterion episode on Charlie Chaplin's Limelight, and plenty of other Criterion content in the back catalog. And as I said, the poll is out on our Twitter account. If you want to follow us there, we are at Casual Cinecast. We are also on Facebook and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. If you want to send us any messages, ask us questions about the movies we're reviewing, send a message to any of those social media accounts or an email to casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And then, of course, if you haven't done so already, you like the show, you want to let more people know they should check it out, give us a review, 5 stars, 10 stars, 12 stars, whatever.
Yeah. We thank you for any stars, but preferably 5. And we won't thank you for 1.
Yeah.
So I lied about that.
Yeah. Screw you for 1. That's what I say.
Yeah, I think Justin saying all that, like, basically in one breath deserves more than 1 star, so.
Yeah.
Oh, I breathed.
For his efforts. Anyways. All right. I think now we should move into News on the March.
News on the March!
All right, we're here in News on the March. Mike, you're up first with a thing that you've seen. Finally, I guess Chris and I have talked about it before, but it's your turn since you finally caught up. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, we didn't do an episode last week, so actually, it's been so long since I've finished this, I kind of forgot I hadn't talked about it yet.
Yeah.
And that is Severance. I finished the entire season. I think there's 9 episodes in the first season, and this is like the big show on Apple TV Plus that everyone was talking about, and that you specifically, Chris, were really trying to get us to watch. Mm-hmm. You guys gave your thoughts the last episode, and I believe you guys both really liked it, and I guess I'm just gonna have to add to that because, yeah, season 1 I thought was really, really interesting. It kept things going and kept the mystery unfolding in interesting ways. I was always trying to predict where it was going to go next. I will say, though, unless they were, I don't know, like, was this always how season 1 was going to end? And what if they didn't get renewed for season 2? I feel like the show, I don't think it's spoiling anything to say that it's a huge cliffhanger. And it would not have been very satisfying if there had been no season 2. I will say that.
Yeah. I agree.
But yeah, I mean, Adam Scott's great in this. Patricia Arquette is super good in this. It's like, I think, one of her best things in a while. Ben Stiller directs a lot of this. He doesn't direct all of them, but he directs most of them, I think, or a good portion of them. And yeah, anyways, I raved on this podcast a while back about Escape at Denimora, which was a Showtime show by Ben Stiller and also had Patricia Arquette in it. And this rose to those expectations, right? Like, I think this didn't disappoint in any way, shape, or form. I didn't think the hype was too much around it, which is like a big risk for these kinds of shows.
Yeah, especially with us talking about it so much and then you coming in kind of late on that.
Yeah, but it's super watchable. My main critique, not my only critique, because the show's not perfect.
Sure.
But my main critique is I think the intro song is in opening credits, like little animation, is off-putting.
Which may be intentional.
It looks like a little
somewhat.
Sims.
It does look like Sims, which might also be intentional too, because I think that's
Yeah, it might be, but it's weird. It's like I don't know, the little Adam Scott's running around.
Yeah, I felt like
and the black goop.
Yeah, I felt a little accustomed to it because my wife follows this Instagram account and she sends me videos, and it's literally animation like that. Like some of the stuff where like they kind of seem like they have no bones and they're like falling out. Like I think there's one point they're like a bunch of little Adam Scotts that seem boneless are like spilling out of something and their limbs are flopping about. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. She sends me it's stuff like that, like exact same type of animation and everything. So like, as to me, I was like, oh, I've seen this before, and I'm kind of accustomed to just how like weird and bizarre this looks.
That's interesting coming from you, the man who hates opening credits songs that are more than 30 seconds long.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it should and could be shorter, but I use that time nowadays to check my phone before the show gets started.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's good. I will say that I stand by my criticism that the brother-in-law character is weird. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe intentionally so, but
yeah,
I feel it nonetheless.
I can't remember if we talked about it much, but yeah, that's the part that kind of stands out. And I'm not sure why his sister's married to him. It's a little bit weird, like because she seems pretty normal and he's like this far out guy, but it might tie in. It almost seems like he has his own. Well, I guess spoilers for Severance, but like he may have his own cult going a little bit, not unlike the Severance world, the Kieran himself. So I don't know.
I don't want to get too much more spoilery than that, but
So who knows? Hopefully it'll tie back in, or they'll adjust so that it makes more sense in the second season. But while I kind of enjoyed his character, it didn't make sense in the world.
Yeah, I mean, like I felt like I was laughing with the show at how ridiculous he was, more than like, I don't know, this is weird and like unintentionally the way that it is, like I guess the only part of the show like that it doesn't clash with to me, and I'll be vague, but like there's a scene with some goats and there's a scene with a lot of dancing, and it kind of felt in line with that. Like it didn't feel weirder than those things. So I don't know. It seems like every now and then it does something just like really weird, and I'm hoping that it means more than just weird for weird's sake, though.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I will say that yeah, I mean, sometimes I think maybe the show goes a bit too far with some of the things, but I don't know. I guess it kind of just depends on where season 2 goes, because I mean, you're right. Sometimes some things are pretty over the top. There's some dancing stuff. There's some goats at one point. There's some art and dancers.
Yeah.
and things where I was like, when they first started happening, I was like, okay. But I don't know. I went on the journey with it. I'm still there. So I don't know. We'll have to see how season 2 picks up and carries it, you know?
Yeah.
If they can keep the ball running with Raised by Wolves, I should at least be able to give something like this a shot for.
Yeah,
Sure.
it can't be weirder than that.
Yeah, it's
exactly.
like it's got a feeling of Lost, you know, like where.
But that's my fear.
Yeah, but and also my joy.
My joy too.
I don't know. There's like a combo. I also fear a little bit of the Lost part of it, but I think that this will be a little bit more focused. And I believe that Dan Erickson, he's kind of the Ben Stiller and Dan Erickson are kind of the showrunners, but Dan Erickson definitely wrote it. You know, like and because they shopped it around for a long time, from my understanding. So it really feels like they have a plan. Now they may adjust, you know, similar to Lost had to, but like adjust on the fly as to how and when they'll tell certain stories. But I really feel like I can't
see Apple TV Plus or whatever the heck it's called telling them like, well, yeah, but there's no way you're going to be able to like end the show whenever you want to. You got to keep it going. It's a hit, you know.
Yeah.
They may,
or you have to do 22 episodes a season. I really
right. I don't think Apple TV's approach is the same way like ABC's was during the Lost heyday
20 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, do you guys think that, and not just because of like the season length or the sort of like let's keep a hit show running as long as possible as like cable television was, but do you think that any show ever like since or nowadays and moving forward would like repeat those same mistakes that Lost has, like those same imperfections? Because Lost was kind of like, you know, breaking some new ground, some different territory, right? And with that you're bound to like not get it perfect, but I just feel like so many mistakes can be learned from, I guess, with Lost, that like nobody's gonna do that again.
Yeah, they may do the opposite approach and do what the Game of Thrones guys did and need 4 more seasons, but
cut it off too soon.
Just turn it down.
Yeah. The Game of Thrones is a really interesting conversation too, but maybe a bit much because it's like they ran out of book. You know, like they were really good at adapting, but once they ran out of material, they kind of didn't do as good of a job.
I believe it's adaptationing.
Adaptationing, perfect.
Yeah.
That's how Nicolas Cage would say it. But yeah, anyways, there's. I think that you're right, Justin. That this isn't network TV anymore. I
don't think network TV would do it.
Yeah, I worry that they'll go and it'll get way too weird. You know, it'll go Raised by Wolves, which is too far for me. Right now, it's just in the right spot. You know, like we'll see where it goes, and you know how it keeps going. So I'm glad you watched it. I'm glad you liked it, Mike. I look forward to next season, which should be not too long.
So I'll catch up with it in like a year or year and a half or whatever it is.
Yeah. Cool.
So moving on to our next topic. Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
All right. So Outer Range.
Oh, what a
which
segue.
is a science fiction Western show on Amazon Prime, starring Josh Brolin.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is a really good TV show to talk about after Severance too, I think.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, okay, so I've only seen the first 2 episodes.
Same. I've seen 2 episodes.
And Justin, you've seen 0. Is that correct?
That is accurate.
So cool.
So I'll shut up
what are
for
your
a while.
thoughts on Outer Range? Just kidding. You don't have any, probably.
True.
Chris, what do you think of this show?
I watched the first 2 episodes, and the third episode is out, but I haven't watched it yet. So that kind of tells you, like, I'm not rushing out to watch it. I will probably watch it because I want to keep up with it. It's an interesting premise. I think right now what my thoughts are is this would have been a better movie because it's an interesting premise. It's got like the sci-fi element to it. It's like Yellowstone meets like some sci-fi stuff, you know. Like
I've never seen Yellowstone, but
I saw
it's got Josh Brolin being a cowboy.
Yeah,
so.
sure. I'm in the TV show just for that.
Josh Brolin's great in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the acting's pretty great in it.
Imogene Poots, is that how you say her name?
Yeah.
She's good.
Yeah. I've liked her since the Art of Self-Defense. She was in that, and she was in a couple of Jesse Eisenberg films. But yeah, so it's got this really interesting premise. There's like this thing that pops up. Josh Brolin's a rancher, and there's this sci-fi thing that pops up on his ranch, and he's also having like land battles with his neighbor, and there's kind of this mystery that happens, but I don't know that mystery propels me into the next episode, that I'm that interested in it, and maybe I should be, or like maybe I watched it wrong. And that's kind of why I wanted to talk to you about it, Mike.
So I watched the first 2 episodes, and then, or maybe I watched the first episode, and then whatever it was, before I saw the Northman, there was actually like a trailer for like the whole season of Outer Range before the Northman, like before like the real trailers caught on,
sure.
like the preamble that plays before the trailers start. So I actually saw a full trailer, and there's some clips in that trailer that make me want to keep going in the series.
Okay.
More that like kind of like just a couple flashes of like the science fiction elements yet to come,
Sure. And
so I'm on board, but like you, I'm not rushing out to see the 3rd episode yet. I'll see it when I see it. It's not quite at the level I want it to be at yet, but since I did see the trailer, I'm still on board. But right now, I agree. It's a little too slow, and maybe there's a little bit too much going on.
Yeah, or I think what's missing.
I don't know.
For me, is just like there's got to be this, and there is kind of like a cliffhanger on the 2nd episode. I mean, even on the 1st episode, but there's not. I don't feel that propulsive energy where like, oh man, I have got to watch the next episode,
Yeah.
And I think it almost might be a better, what do you think about it? Would it be a better movie? Like if they just kind of like took some stuff out and made it into like, a 2-hour movie, would it be?
It's hard for me to know because I don't know where it's going yet.
Sure. And I'm also worried. I also feel like I don't want this to be a multi-season thing, at least based on the first 2 episodes. Like I'm worried about it being like 3 to 5 seasons long. That's not exactly what I'm looking for here. So maybe I'm bringing a lot of baggage to this.
Yeah, it seems like it. It seems like you have like this it seems like you like the premise, but you want it to be something different.
Yeah, and that could be, and maybe it's because like I really like Severance. But like I'm like I can only handle so many Severances at one time. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Better Call Saul's out. Like there's just, I guess there's so much demanding my attention too. Is part of it.
Your cup overflow.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll start seeing more and more of that as time goes on, and like these like short series are like really popular. Is that things that could be movies being 6-episode things now. Like movie pitches that they pitched, and then they're like, you know what? That sounds great, but can you make it 10 episodes?
Yeah. I recently came across that with Pam and Tommy.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And another show on Hulu, The Dropout, with Amanda Seyfried about Elizabeth Holmes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
These are all just kind of like these. Yeah, I mean, they work okay as shows, but they're not. They might have been a stronger like 2-hour movie,
Yeah, I'm feeling that with Winning Time, which I think I talked about a few weeks ago, the Lakers dynasty show on HBO. Like after about like 5 episodes, I was like, I think 5 hours of this is maybe about my limit. So this might have been better as a movie.
Yeah, I mean, you might argue that with like something like the Book of Boba Fett as well.
Sure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Or like. Frankly, most of the Marvel TV shows could have been a movie. And I'm not,
but I think we have to kind of let that go because with the streaming world, that's just not the landscape we live in anymore,
Yeah. Although so for those that don't know, Netflix had some really bad news this last week. So it may be that we go, who knows what streaming will bring? Maybe it doesn't bring in enough revenue, and we switch more towards movies again, or I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happened with the news of what Netflix broke. With their 200,000 lost subscribers, with 2 million more coming.
I think part of that's them not running things very well, though.
Yeah, certainly they should not be releasing everything at once, because then I just subscribe for the 1 month and watch.
And they should maybe curate their content a little harder instead of just
everything.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
There's a whole conversation to be had there too.
Sure.
But who knows? I think after we're kind of emerging from COVID, hopefully, we'll see what happens in the future. So
Well. Anyways, Out of Range.
that was a weird conversation. Yeah, I'll keep watching it. We'll do a wrap up when it's over, but I'll keep watching it and see.
Yeah.
I'm interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Brolin's gotten me through the first 2 episodes just fine, and I'll keep going unless it gets actively bad. But yeah. All right. At this point, are we ready to move on?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing on the docket before the main review is Better Call Saul Season 6 premiered last week, and at the time we are recording this, there are 3 episodes out.
True. And I've
This
seen
is
all
the
of
first
them.
chance we've gotten to talk about it, so here we go. Who wants to kick us off?
I kind of want to nominate you because you're the biggest fan, I think, of the show, maybe. I don't know if that's fair, but...
I mean, I don't know. I don't want to take that honor from Chris, but it's possible.
We can love it equally, Mike.
Oh,
I don't know. One of us needs to know. We need to know who likes it more.
I guess maybe longest fan. I feel like, I don't know. I just feel like maybe you've been talking about the show to me since it came out.
Yeah, maybe so. But okay, sure. I'll kick us off. Yeah, so I had to catch up on season 5 and do like a refresher because it's been like 2 years since it came out. And so anyway, I watched like the last 2 episodes of season 5 before this premiered, and yeah, I remember what was going on, and that show's awesome.
Sure.
And it's back, and I think season 6 pretty much picks up exactly where season 5 left off. So if you are foggy on that, you should definitely refresh yourself.
Yeah, you sent me a link to like, I think it was about a 15-minute, like previously on Better Call Saul. Like, I think it was released officially by AMC, right?
Yeah, that I didn't watch it, but since I saw it was official, I was like, this is probably pretty good.
Yeah.
I watched it too to catch up.
I watched like 3 minutes of the new episode, like the first episode of season 6, and then was immediately like, I need a refresher.
Yeah, what's happening?
And so I watched it, and it was immensely helpful.
Yeah, I mean, basically it feels like just no time has passed at all the way they handle it, right?
Yeah. Yet it's been years since season 5 ended.
Exactly. So, yeah, anyways,
I'm pretty sure
I got to say the first 3 episodes of season 6 so far are just great. I think it's everything that I've come to expect from the show. Just execution is great. Like cinematography is just next level. I don't know. The craftsmanship of this show is just something else. It just feels different than other shows. I don't know what it is exactly. Like, do you guys feel that, or is it just me?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I mean, they put a lot more thought into it, I think.
Yeah, recency bias, but I just watched episode 3 last night, and it's like the sort of meticulousness of that opening shot of episode 3. I don't think I see anything quite like it on most other shows, if not every other show.
Yeah. Yeah, and something that I've always appreciated since Breaking Bad is like, I don't know, whereas like most TV shows will tell a story a certain way, like they hold back and like they use wide shots, and they like to just hold on those wide shots. You know what I mean? They don't like to punch in for a close up that's unnecessary. They'll just take a really interesting composition and make the whole scene play out within that shot sometimes, and it's just, I just love it. I love the pacing that creates, and it makes it feel different than other shows, and so that is not lost here at all. And like you said, yeah, there's a whole meticulous opening shot in episode 3 that pays off in a really interesting way at the end of the episode, because at first you're like, what is this? I mean, it's beautiful, but why am I looking at this?
Yeah, at first I thought it was something I didn't get, and then by the end of the episode, I was like, okay, that's what that was about.
And I feel like that kind of sums up like Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad really well, because I think a lot of times they show you something and you're like, I don't know exactly what this is, or I don't know how we're going to get here. I mean, even Better Call Saul is all we know where, Saul Goodman's going to end up, but we don't know how, so it's the same thing.
And they keep making that more interesting every season somehow. That gap that we're rapidly rushing to close in right now,
And that's kind of the other thing to me. I think that this show, we were talking about Outer Range being a better movie. This needs to be a TV show, because what it shows in this, especially Better Call Saul, like kind of as opposed to Breaking Bad, but is this gradual change that like all these characters have had. And none of these changes that, the characters have are like drastic or like overnight, We have been with them on this journey, and even like Kim Wexler has changed from the very beginning to this point, but like only incrementally each episode, slowly over the 5 years, and that's what this show does better than any other show that I've seen, or even like a movie, which movies would be hard because you only have a short amount of time, but like is this incremental movement towards one path or another, like deciding to take one path or another, and each time that gets decided, like we see him moving down a path, but it's so slow that like it kind of catches up to us, the viewers, like, oh my goodness, I can't believe she's in the spot, I don't know. I find that part of it fascinating, that gradual move, and showing those gradual changes. It does so well.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I think you're right. Yeah. Were you going to say something, Justin?
No, just to kind of echo what you guys said, basically. Nothing super new. And it's definitely not dropped in quality. It's still really good so far. I find that, and I don't want to steal what you normally say, Mike. So like this is kind of credit to you for saying it first, at least that I heard. But this show, to me, I like it so much more than Breaking Bad, and it's the better show. Jimmy McGill / Saul Goodman. I love watching every part that's him. Is like, I'm like, it's just like perfect to me, and I could watch it all day. Like if the show didn't have Nacho or didn't catch up with like Gus Fring or Mike or any of those people, and we were just watching Jimmy and Kim and the other people closely related to him. I can't remember. Chuck was his older brother's name.
Yeah.
Just those
and
parts,
Howard.
like to me, I could watch that all day. So it's really great.
Yeah, and like Chris said, I think that Peter Gould is the primary showrunner at this point in Better Call Saul, and he was there for the bulk of Breaking Bad. I think he even introduced Saul Goodman's character in Breaking Bad and wrote a good portion of it. So I think Vince Gilligan gets a lot of love for this universe, but I think Peter Gould is like the unsung hero here.
Sure.
That I think probably deserves more credit because Breaking Bad was a huge hit show that doesn't need anyone to defend it, right? Everyone, I think, pretty much knows that that's like a classic, right?
Sure.
And be able to take a spin-off idea that could have been something completely different, but then also to help, create something that's better, and then also help make Breaking Bad better, and just by existing and enriching characters and universes and lore, like the twins, right? Like that's an idea that was kind of lame, I think, in Breaking Bad, and could be argued that it still is. Yeah. But Better Call Saul is taking like, okay, well, let's give more to that, give more context. It's the same kind of joy I get from Star Wars, I guess.
Yeah,
like retroactively repurposing and like recontextualizing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul did really well, I think, is they kind of took, like we were kind of saying, the twins, or like they kind of took these character like archetypes or caricatures, like almost cartoonish characters, like like the drug dealers, or like Jesse Pinkman even is kind of like over the top, cartoonish, and then they gave him a soul, and then you're like heartbroken at the end. So that they're really good. I mean, look, Saul Goodman started off as like this sleazy lawyer, and now like we're so attached to him. You know, like, so they have done a really good job of taking these archetypes or these over the top type characters, you know, that you'd see in, you know, like a gangster film, and then just kind of getting down to the nitty gritty of it and like giving them a soul and giving them these conflicting emotions and giving us conflicting emotions about them. And you know, just kind of, I don't know, getting down to the nitty gritty of the grand archetype characters, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Well, and the last thing I want to say before we get into the Northman review is just that I think we have 10 episodes of the entire show left at this point. I think there's 13 episodes in the final season, if I'm not mistaken. I am very curious to see exactly how this is going to tie into Breaking Bad and to what degree. And just speculation from here on out. So if you don't want any speculation about the show, just, you know, skip on ahead. Everything's time-stamped. But I am wondering if we are going to go post Breaking Bad and hang out more in the Gene timeline, because we didn't get a Gene black and white opener at the beginning of this season. So
yeah,
I wonder if we're going to have any flash forwards where, because right now there's 3 timelines of Better Call Saul. There's the past that we've been hanging out in. There's the Breaking Bad fallout that we see at the beginning of the season. And then there's the Gene timeline.
I see, yeah. The tie. Well, it depends on when you think that house, the opening of this season, takes place. Because I kind of thought...
I think it takes place post Breaking Bad, but pre-Gene.
Yeah, that was my guess.
Because everything's getting like repossessed or taken up by...
Yeah, I kind of read it though. Gene was already gone, because I believe it takes place in about the same time you guys do. But like, so Saul Goodman's already gone and become Gene at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever we're seeing the intro with all his stuff,
yeah,
and the cork for the bottle that falls out, I think right at that time, you know, give or take a couple days, Saul Goodman's in the vacuum cleaners guy's store, getting ready to run away with Walt to separate locations.
Yeah. I think that we'll get through. There's 3 more episodes in this half of the season. I think we'll get those 3 episodes and we won't get any Gene. And I think it'll be much heavier in the second half of Gene.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
The second half is going to be all Gene. That's my prediction. It's bold.
Man,
and
that's
wrong.
a lot of stuff they have to cover in 3 episodes. But yes, that could be.
Well, okay, and then also we have to figure out when Saul Goodman's going to meet Walt and Jesse, because that's coming up soon.
Yeah.
Sure.
And in Breaking Bad, when they first meet Saul Goodman, he's like blindfolded, and he mentions Lalo by name.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's got to be. We're nearing the overlap time here. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we still have some like space to make up, because I believe like when they first meet him, Saul Goodman's like, why don't you just, because they're trying to get one of their friends out of jail or something like that, and he recommends, why don't you just kill him? You know, like so to get where he is now, to a lawyer that just recommends killing a guy, that seems like a big gap there too.
Indeed.
So it's exciting. And I have one real quick question, because what could be the next like Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul spinoff? Because I don't want this world to end, and maybe we should end on a high note. But I feel like they have like a good cycle or a good group of people down in Albuquerque. You know, you don't want to put them out of work. You know, like so what character do you most want to see in a spinoff?
Kim Wexler.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably it. Like what she does adjacent to Breaking Bad post Saul / Jimmy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's probably mine. I absolutely don't want any of the like cartel characters, because that's always my least favorite part of every episode.
Sure.
So none of that.
I think, yeah, Kim Wexler, although I have my doubts as to whether she survives. That's what I'm most worried about.
I mean, that's what we all said about Jesse Pinkman, so.
That's true. Anyways, all right. Kim Wexler is the most interesting, for sure, character in this series.
Yeah.
So
I want the Ray Seahorn drama show where she's the lead.
yeah, like a lawyer show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But whatever. I mean, we don't know how this is going to end. We'll see.
Yeah.
But anyways, if there had to be another spinoff, that's my answer. But anyways.
It's a good answer.
Yeah.
All right. Are we ready to move into the review now?
Yep.
We sure are.
All right.
My kingdom was stolen from me. My heart knows only revenge.
Okay, so as always with our newer films, we will be doing a spoiler-free section up front. We'll just be giving our general thoughts and how we feel about the film, and then we will give you a warning, a spoiler alert, play a little bumper so that you have plenty of time to pause the podcast, go watch The Northman, and then come back and finish listening to the episode.
All right. So The Northman was directed by Robert Eggers. It stars Alexander Skarsgård, Nicole Kidman, and Anya Taylor-Joy. The IMDb synopsis says, from visionary director Robert Eggers comes The Northman, an action-filled epic that follows a young Viking prince on his quest to avenge his father's murder.
Okay. Weird.
All right, so I find that to be a little inaccurate and setting up the wrong expectation.
True.
Because I wouldn't describe this as an action film.
I wouldn't describe him as a young Viking prince either, but...
Well, he's young at the beginning.
He's young
when
at the
he goes,
beginning.
sets
but
off on his revenge.
Yeah. But
And
then
he's
he's an
briefly
adult.
a young prince.
Yeah.
So we don't follow the young prince.
No.
But anyways.
Spoilers. Okay, so who wants to kick us off with their opening thoughts and their relationship with Robert Eggers and their expectations and for The Northman and everything?
It's a good question.
I'll go ahead and go
Yeah.
to cut off that awkward silence. Yeah, so I feel like... Did we review The Witch on this podcast? I don't think so. But we did do The Lighthouse.
We did not.
So I do feel like we've kind of documented our relationship with Robert Eggers to a certain extent. I like him. You know, I think The Lighthouse is crazy and weird, but I like it. You know, he's doing unique things at the very least. The Witch is really good too, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm always interested in seeing what Robert Eggers is going to do next. He's earned that from me, you know, like, and I'll just, even if the trailer's not good or like if it doesn't seem interesting, it doesn't pique my interest personally, I would still go see it because I'm like, well, this is going to be interesting at the very least.
Sure.
And you know what the most interesting thing is, or the thing I carry away from this movie is we are never going to see another movie like this from Robert Eggers. You know, we are never going to see, I think this like a $70 to $90 million Viking epic from Robert Eggers at the very least. Probably not another Viking epic ever, you know, like, but we'll never see a Robert Eggers movie on this scale again because there was a lot of money that people put on it. I don't know if it's going to make all the money back, which isn't necessarily, but I hold that special. This is going to be a special movie, you know, like that Robert Eggers oeuvre or whatever, because it was so expensive. But that being said, I really enjoyed this movie quite a bit. This movie is one of the things I was looking forward to when I was going to this movie was the language in it, the talking, because, in both The Witch and The Lighthouse, the dialect was so specific. I couldn't necessarily tell you that. I will say I talked to my cousin about The Witch, and he went on for about an hour as to about how and I should also say my cousin's a professor at a college, like, of history, and he went on about how historically accurate The Witch is. And that's one of the things I really like about Robert Eggers, is like that extra mile he goes in his research, even though I would say 90% of it is lost on me. But I still think I can feel it, or it gives his films a unique feeling to a certain extent. So I do enjoy that aspect to his films. However, the language in this film, The Northman, kind of felt like there wasn't very much. Now, it was a unique language when they did speak, but it was almost silent. There wasn't a lot of talking that happens in this movie, I don't think, or that I remember. But there are some great action sequences. And I mean, Alexander Skarsgård in this movie is essentially like this monster. I didn't know that you could have muscles that big on your shoulder to your neck, but that man scared me. It was remarkable. Those muscles, I can't get over it. But
it's. I think regardless of how you feel about the movie, I don't think anyone could tell you that it's not well cast.
Sure. Anya Taylor-Joy in it she's so great at that role, that like ethereal, but she can also put the emotions in it. Anyways, she's really good. I really love this movie, but it is strange and unique, and all those things we talked. I said about the Lighthouse. It's probably not as far off as the Lighthouse is. But
yeah, I would say it's more accessible than that.
Sure. I think whoever gave him $90 million was like, you probably need to make this a little bit more accessible than The Lighthouse. But it's not Braveheart, or it's not even like The Last of the Mohicans, which I would think that they're very similar movies, I think, to a certain extent. But this is still like often off to left field a little bit compared to those films.
Well, it feels less Hollywood washed than something like Braveheart, or like Last of the Mohicans, where it's like they're trying very hard to make your main character very heroic and noble and all that stuff. And I would argue that this movie doesn't do that to its main character.
Sure. But yeah, I'm going to pass it off now. There's a lot more to talk about in spoilers but Justin, how did you feel about this movie?
Well, I think that a lot of the stuff that you're saying is accurate. The stuff about Robert Eggers and his research and everything, and how that kind of makes for usually a more unique viewing experience. I do think that the language, I remember a lot of talking actually, and kind of a lot of language, which is kind of funny. But I think the language is also one of those things that's made a little more accessible. It being the more Hollywood movie.
Yeah, they're also all speaking English.
Yeah,
for a good.
That's true. But I think they are in The Lighthouse too, right?
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, in real life, I don't think they would be speaking English, these people. Yeah. So I think he's adapting it to English and then maybe simplifying it a bit.
Yeah. But it just felt not too difficult to, like, follow, or I didn't really have to, like, think too much about the language to, like, make sure I was understanding.
Not like I did in The Witch or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's also a very familiar story, too. So
Yeah, I mean, that could be it. I think maybe my favorite parts about this movie were some of the like more ritual things, and like the culture and the customs and I guess I don't want to say like religion, I guess, but the mythology that they follow, and like all of the stuff that comes out of it, like early on in the movie when like Ethan Hawke and his son go down into the thing and do some stuff, is like all of that stuff I found like really interesting, just from like wrapping my head around the process of like why. and
Yeah, like this is wild.
yeah, and like what's going on, and because I guess I'm kind of assuming that some of that is accurate. Or
I think it's
I would
safe to
assume so.
assume with Robert Eggers' movie, someone may tell us different, but I think that's a safe
or
bet.
based in some sort of reality and maybe
Sure,
heightened
sure.
or
Yeah.
something like that, right? But you know, and then some of it's kind of the same kind of like fascination I get. I don't know if everyone had this experience, but you know, like when you learn about like Aztec culture in school and you learn about like that game they play where like they like have to hit like a ball through like sideways hoops without their hands, and like the losing team gets beheaded and stuff, and you're like, oh my gosh. You know,
Yeah.
that's probably like my favorite stuff in this movie, because like the movie is obviously really well made. It's really well shot. It's really well cast, and everything's really like top notch about it. But from like a really subjective point of view, like it's not necessarily the movie for me. Like I don't know. It just didn't really like click with me on any sort of like emotional level, even like emotionally in terms of like wanting to know what happens. Like I just kind of found myself mostly not caring about the plot or story or anything that happens. And that's not really a knock against the movie. That's just me, I think. You know what I mean? But it's entertaining and it's well made. Well made enough that like I wasn't ever bored or anything like that. I lacked any sort of like big connection or really being like excited about what happens next or anything like that. Like so in that sense, I guess it's more of a movie that like I appreciate more than like enjoy or you know want to watch again, if that makes sense. So
real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
But one of the things I thought that Everything Everywhere All at Once and this movie, no matter like where you are emotionally with a film or if it clicked with you, I think both of those films you can walk away appreciating the craftsmanship that goes into those movies, and that they're both like really high quality. So I agree with what you're saying about this film. It's just whether or not it clicks with you, you know?
Yeah. And maybe we can dive more into that later, like what that is. But like,
yeah,
I don't know. There's just this sort of like, it's kind of the same thing that like the reason I haven't watched Game of Thrones yet is like they're obviously not quite the same like genre, but just like the overall vibe and like things that are happening with like royalty and this sort of like hyper masculine people and fighting and like all that. I don't know. It just doesn't grab me, but I'll leave it there, I guess, and pass it off to Mike.
Yeah. So this movie is like, yeah, I agree with everything Chris was saying. I think it's like technically great. The history and the lore and like the folklore that Robert Eggers can like put into this movie is all, you know, didn't disappoint. It's basically what we've come to expect from him, I think. I actually was watching like an interview with Robert Eggers, like where he kind of breaks down some of the scenes in this movie, and he was talking about how like the show Vikings shows like a lot of like really inaccurate, like kind of revisionist stuff to make Vikings seem like a completely different culture, right?
Yeah.
Where like you have these brutal female warriors and everything like that, when in reality they're not like that at all. It was very much like this, I guess, where it's, you know, you take slaves and you enslave and most people you ever met probably, you know, are within like 10 miles and you don't go very far, and like, you know, this one little town or this one little village is your entire world and your entire culture, and everything that you know or think is right or good or true all comes from, you know, people who just that's all you've ever met. It's just these people, right?
Yeah, the
Right.
same 100 people.
Yeah. And
Right, exactly.
and
And, you know,
not to interrupt you, but just like, because you mentioned the Viking show, is that I had a friend, and I mentioned this to you, Mike, but I had a friend that is really a big fan of Vikings and really likes the show Vikings, and he went and saw the movie before I did, and he texted me and was just like, I almost walked out of this movie 3 times. It's the worst thing I've ever seen. I can't believe that like anybody like would even fund this movie. Like, who is this director and how did they get funding? He's not really like a big film person, so he wasn't really familiar with Robert Eggers.
Doesn't sound like it.
But like, if you are going to this movie with that sort of Vikings thing in mind, I think maybe this is going to be very different.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, and as someone who has no affinity for Vikings at all, really, I have like no opinion on them other than like, yeah, maybe like Justin. It's like I always considered Vikings to be like hyper masculine, like,
yeah.
But that's just the culture, right? That's just kind of what my understanding of Vikings is.
Yeah.
And this movie showed me some things I didn't know, and then also confirmed some things that I always thought about Vikings, right? Right?
Yeah.
They rape and plunder. That's their culture, and like it's built through abducting people and assimilating them into your little village, and then that's just kind of what you do. And and I think that's pretty interesting and fascinating, and that's kind of what I expected and what I got. And then, but what I guess I didn't expect from Robert Eggers was, maybe the plot's a little bare bones and you can kind of see it coming. It is a revenge tale, told in like a Shakespearean style. In fact, I think the folk tale that this is an adaptation of is the inspiration for Hamlet.
I think so. Somewhere along there, this is the Hamlet tale.
Yeah, there's a lot of very familiar beats and things that happen in this movie.
And that's, from what I understand, is Hamlet is based on the folk tale that this is based on.
Yeah,
gotcha.
So there's a little bit of overlap there. It kind of feels like that, only maybe with less monologues, but some.
Yeah.
But I guess what I will say about this is I didn't expect a Robert Eggers movie to have such a crazy vision. Like this gets really just like, I don't want to say like crazy, because it doesn't get crazy, but like the third act of this movie is like, you got to have a vision there. It gets real Revenge of the Sith, I guess I should say. You know what I mean? And based on his previous stuff that's so low key, and maybe not The Lighthouse. The Lighthouse is pretty visionary, so I guess there you go. But it very much feels like a Robert Eggers trying to make a much more accessible tale, but while not necessarily giving up what makes him,
Yeah, like visionary on the budget that this movie has, right? Like on a much more epic scale than a movie about 2 people trapped inside of a lighthouse and like the island that it's on.
I guess it's just like the swings, like the swing to be epic.
Yeah.
Is something that I didn't know Robert Eggers had in him, and it's fun to see him flex that. I don't know that he'll ever try to do anything like this again. Who knows, I
also think some of that is the push and pull between what Robert Eggers wants to do and what the studio kind of wanted him to do.
Well, I mean, I listened to an interview with him, and he actually talks about that, and he was very what's the word I'm looking for? He wasn't precious with it. He understood that they needed to make their money back, and that every change that they suggested was him trying to honor his word of trying to make the most entertaining Robert Eggers movie possible.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think he understands that maybe the studio interference may have made it better for what it always was intended to be, even if maybe in the editing room he would have done something different personally.
Yeah.
I would like to see a director's cut of this if one exists on Blu-ray one day,
Mm-hmm. It'd be fun. It'd be interesting for sure.
Yeah, just to see like how he would have put it together differently now that it's already out there. But who knows? Maybe he's one of those directors that doesn't believe in alternate cuts. Who knows? But anyways, all in all, I really enjoyed it. It's not my favorite Robert Eggers movie, but it's still solid. It's better than most movies. I see what Justin's saying in the sense that like I wasn't emotionally invested in it, but I don't think I've been emotionally invested in any of his movies. They're always just more.
What's going on?
Unfold. Yeah, I watch them unfold, and then I think about it and dissect it later, and that's kind of how I approach his movies. and this one doesn't feel any different than that to me.
Yeah, I feel like it has less to dive into. Like it's pretty straightforward in comparison to other ones, but go on.
Yes and no. I mean, I agree, and I don't, but we can get more into that into spoilers.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that depending on which character you are in the movie depends on how like I don't know. Like I can imagine that like one person's hero's journey is someone else's villain's tale, you know? And
right.
Anyway, I don't know. I think it plays with this idea of like the culture you're brought up into very much shapes your point of view and what you find to be heroic. And I think that's pretty interesting. But other than that, I just say I really enjoyed it. It sounds like I liked it more than Justin, and I think I aligned more with Chris.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm ready to get into spoilers whenever you guys are.
Yeah, I guess real quick before we get into spoilers, I just want to. There's a great action sequence, you know, like kind of at the very beginning of the movie, that is just pretty stunning. And you know, like if we get something that I really like that action sequence at the very beginning of them taking over that,
where he catches that spear.
Yeah, that's the start of it, and there's like a bunch of kind of like one takes and stuff like that. It's real exciting, and
Eggers likes his wide shots. He doesn't like to cut.
And there's like so much going on in those in the frame. You know, like it must have been hell to get. And from my understanding, the movie was really hard to film. Which
I think another thing that's interesting is it's a Viking tale like set in like Eastern Europe and like where like the land of the Rus, which is like modern day Ukraine, right?
Interesting.
It's like usually when I think of Vikings, I always think of them like pillaging, like, you know, more west in Europe than this.
Yeah. I think of it as a little more coastal usually too.
Yeah.
There's not quite that much that I can remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm certainly no expert. But anyways, I think it's worth going to see the movie for that sequence alone. I really enjoyed it.
I think though, if you're going out expecting like
right, that's about
even
all
action
the action
on the
you're gonna
level of like something like The Revenant, I think you're gonna be disappointed. This isn't like wall to wall brutality. You know what I mean? This is
agreed.
It's very measured in its violence, I think, and even like the violence that is portrayed isn't as bloody as you would think. Like there's guts and stuff, but it's not.
I felt like it was more realistic as opposed to the movie violence where you're like, fuck yeah. Or as opposed to this, you're like, oh. Whoa.
Yeah, it's not like John Wick the Viking. You know?
Right, yeah, definitely not that. There's plenty of gore, though, I would say.
Yeah.
It's just not action heavy, I don't think.
Agreed.
No.
There's consequences. You see the consequences to their actions, as you know, as opposed to like John Wick type of thing. But yeah, all right, let's move into spoilers.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
Any more cigarettes you got up there? I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
All right, so now that we're hearing spoilers, the big reason I didn't like this movie is because I was promised a lot of Bjork, I felt. And there's not enough. And that was disappointing to me.
Yeah.
Your thoughts,
You
gentlemen?
felt you were robbed of your Bjork?
Very much. And maybe it's because I saw it at the Alamo Drafthouse and they ran like 3 sections of Bjork stuff before the movie. Like kind of like a chronicle of like her acting career, a really weird, like artsy, like video that she made about the television, and then like played a Bjork music video as well. And so maybe that was it. But I was just, even before that, I thought Bjork was going to be a bigger part. And she's in one scene.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of expected it based on the trailer. Like maybe I expected maybe another Vision or something with her in it.
Yeah.
But based on like what she was doing in the trailer, and I was like, oh, okay. I have a feeling she's just going to be some crazy, like, Vision, you know?
Yeah.
It was a pretty badass. She looked pretty badass.
Yeah. She looked great. She sounded great. I enjoyed what she did, and I was ready for more.
Yeah. she was the one that kicked off the whole second act.
She brought him his tear.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess one thing I wish we would have commented on this in non-spoilers. We didn't even mention Nicole Kidman here, going for it.
Oh yeah, she's really good.
She's
in
good.
This.
Yeah, she's great, and I think
For what
her
she
character's
has.
what?
Well, I don't feel like she's in a ton of it, but she's got like one scene like that's knock it out of the park scene.
Well, the stuff that she is in, I think, leads to some interesting conversations, right?
Absolutely.
Like, what does it mean to be a woman and have to survive in this world that they inhabit, in this culture, right?
Yeah.
It's like she was a slave from somewhere, right? And then as it turns out, Ethan Hawke just kind of abducted her and impregnated her, and then that was her lot in life. and in any other movie, like in a Braveheart type movie, like Ethan Hawke would have been like a Mufasa type, right? Like a really honorable dude, and portrayed as a really honorable dude.
Yeah.
But I think what's so cool about this movie, and what you don't really see in revenge movies that often because they're usually so glamorous, is that like this main dude, like just because he's your dad doesn't mean he was a good dude, right? Just because like he raised you and was nice to you doesn't mean he wasn't horrible and awful to everyone else. And there's a argument to be made that the uncle's probably a nicer guy, certainly not any worse.
Yeah, I think one of the things I did enjoy and found interesting was the way that the rug is kind of pulled out from under him, because he rose off as a kid of I will avenge you, father, I will whatever
save you,
mother, blah 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 blah, and that's kind of his mantra. And I think he's still operating on like those three principles the entire movie until that scene with Nicole Kidman, and then just kind of having that pulled out from under him was just something that I enjoyed watching play out, and then getting back to the point of, well, I'm still gonna go and back and kill him, and like why he does that and stuff for different reasons. I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I felt
it's like for a minute there, like he could have left and been happy and like been like broken the cycle of like this horrible, like, violent cycle that his family's stuck in. He had a chance to go be happy, but then he's like, what, you're pregnant? Like, my kids will never be safe. And it's like, they probably would.
You think so?
They would probably be safe.
I kind of, there's going to be, it's like the Quentin Tarantino Kill Bill, like she avenges, like her unborn child, but then, at some point somebody's going to come looking for her because she killed a bunch of people in the process of that, right? And I think until that guy was dead, his uncle, especially after he killed his son, there was a point at almost any time before he killed the son that he would have been okay. They could have gone off and been happy, I think. But once he killed the son, it was over, and that guy was going to hunt him hunt him and his family until it was over. So the only way they could be safe was if they lost Alexander Skarsgård for permanent. That was my take on it. But that doesn't mean that yours is wrong.
I don't know. I feel like he probably could have traveled somewhere and got, like, I don't know. I feel like there's multiple places in this movie where, like, he feels compelled to do something because that's like what he wants to do, but it's entirely like misguided and
sure, the whole movie,
crazy. But,
like going back for revenge.
But anyway, I enjoyed that messiness of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is that, like, to get revenge, it's like he has to kill people who maybe are even nicer than his dad was, right? You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's infinitely fascinating. And then, at the end, like whenever he finally completes it and he's like seeing the Valkyrie take him to Valhalla, he's like, I've done it. I did it. And he's like, but did you? I mean, Anya Taylor-Joy's still out there. Like, now what kind of life did you just thrust upon her?
Yeah. I mean, I think that this movie does that, a lot, because my favorite sequence, as everybody knows, is the spear sequence, and then, but even after that, you're like, yeah, they like fought off these guys. You just see them rounding up all the villagers. They're going to keep the ones they want, and they just put him in a like hut and burn it down. You know, like so then you're like, oh wait, this isn't this isn't fair or fun. You know, like so it makes you rethink everything. And I really enjoy this movie for those reasons. You know, like I actually think, in my opinion, where the movie is the weakest is that last fight sequence. You know, like I guess I'm not necessarily that invested. It's just these two guys that like basically, you know, they're like, well, one of us has to die, you know, and I know that both of them are going to die by the end of it, or you know, like that's not the interesting part of the film. And in fact, I kind of felt like that was the worst looking part of this film too, is that sequence. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it's just that last sequence where they're fighting just kind of didn't do it for me. And that was kind of, for me, the weakest part of the film.
Yeah, so, that to me was like peak hyper-masculine thing that turns me off from like this type of thing. It was like, oh, meet me at the gates of hell, you know, and like
sure.
It's just kind of like a little much and not that interesting.
Yeah, but it also felt like at that point neither one of them were really mad at the other. I mean, they were mad, but it just felt like, oh, I get it now, but we're just going through the motions at this point, you know? Does that make sense?
I feel like with Alexander Skarsgård, his goal was to ultimately die, I think.
Sure, I get it, yeah. Anyways,
but, as far as the way it looked, I don't know. I don't agree that this is necessarily like I don't know. I mean, I hear what you're saying about the hyper masculine thing, Justin, about like how it's like it turns you off, but it's like it's a movie about Vikings, so it's like I don't know.
That's also my point of like why I don't think it's a fault of the movies.
Yeah, I think that there's another layer also. There's like a version of this movie that's the 300, right? And in this movie, that masculinity is kind of nuanced and like second guessed even by the characters that are the hyper masculine ones. You know, or at least I feel that way. That's how I walk away.
I feel like it's part of that masculinity that you're describing. I feel like that's part of the conversation we're supposed to be having about why he's not a hero.
Right.
Because it's like look at Nicole Kidman. It's like, you know, from his point of view, she's evil, but from her point of view, his entire family is in like this culture that she's been abducted into is evil, and this is how you survive.
Yeah, he was a son.
Anya Taylor-Joy, it's like there's something to be said that she may not even love him or care for him or feel close to him. This is just the way she survives.
Yeah. It's certainly more interesting to think about and to talk about than it is to like, at least for me, than it is to watch as a action sequence or a fight sequence in a film. But
300, this is not trying to be. And when I hear like hyper masculine, I'm like, that's kind of what it sounds like you're thinking this is trying to be, if that makes sense. And I don't think this is ever trying to be that. I think, there is some hyper masculine stuff in this culture that is being portrayed, and this idea of dying in battle and glory and all that, so you can feel like a hero. It's like that needs to happen so that we as the audience can be like, oh, but if we take a step back, we realize he's not a hero at all, and then he's just a product of his environment, you know?
Yeah. Like I said, I don't think it's a fault of the movie or the story. It's just
something that kind of rubs you. You just can't. It prevents you from attaching to the movie. I think is what. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Yeah,
it makes sense. I mean. Alexander Skarsgård's neck muscles are hypermasculine in themselves, so it's hard to get away from that.
Hyper something.
Yeah. Man, there's this one moment, I think it's like after he's like climbed over the wall, and I keep going back to the sequence, but he's climbed over the wall, and he does this like thing with his arms, and like he hunches over, and he's like, I don't know, he becomes an animal, and he's just like, so menacing when he does that, and his neck muscles are popping out and it's insane. I don't, you know, like
all of the sort of like animalness is one of those things that falls into that category of like the culture and like ritualistic stuff that I found interesting. You know, like Ethan Hawke and him when he's young go underground, and then they just start like, you know, howling or barking at each other, growling at each other like wolves, and like eat out of bowls like wolves or dogs or whatever. And how they kind of like almost transform into a different state of mind, a different not even state of mind, but like almost into like a different state of being, and like embody an animal as they go into battle at certain points. I just found that to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Do we have anything else?
I think that's everything.
Everything for the movie? The whole movie?
You got more?
Well, I mean, I feel like we could probably talk about the scene with Nicole Kidman and them kissing, and I'm curious what like you guys interpret that, because I mean, I think to me, my understanding from what I've heard of like other people who've seen the movie, that's kind of one of the bigger like, what the heck's going on here? Why would that happen? The mother and son there.
I just rack it up to this is how she survives. Like I think in her eyes, I don't know if this is like her desired outcome, obviously, but like in her eyes, I think it is a viable option that she was throwing out there when she kissed him about, she's like, I could be your queen then. Oh, you're not into it? Never mind. I was just kidding. Let me try to kill you. You know, like,
yeah.
You know, I think for a minute there, it's like, I think she's a survivor and she's doing what she has to do, you know? And if her son wants to make her queen, I think there's a possibility where that could have happened, you know?
Yeah. It's certainly in the old Oedipal Rex showing up. Yeah. I think you're right, Mike, you know, about the survival. And I mean, I imagine that he was born of rape, you know? Like,
well, that's certainly what it sounds like.
Yeah, that's that's why I took it.
Yeah. So, yeah. And that's, I find that really interesting too. So, you know, that whole turn there, which we've gone over. So.
Which initially I thought that she was maybe trying to like get him to let his guard down and then kill him. But I guess
that's what she tried to do ultimately.
Yeah, because ultimately that's what she tried to do. So I was like, that's what she was doing. But maybe I need to watch it again, because it sounds like your interpretation, Mike, was that she tried to kill him once she realized he wasn't going to go along. And I kind of saw it as a disarming technique so that she could kill him the entire time.
I think it could have gone either way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think she could tell, oh, he doesn't seem to be as into this as just reading the room here. Okay, let me try to stab him, you know?
She was keeping her options open, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't think that was her preferred option. I think she would prefer he die, you know? But if she can't stop him and he's come there to slaughter her new husband, as these things tend to happen in this culture.
Yeah.
Every few years, it seems like some kind of crazy violent, family side starts to take place, you know? Mm-hmm. So I think it's just the way that she tends to navigate this culture. And to me, that's what's so interesting about this, is where the interesting stuff comes into it, that there is stuff here to dissect and talk about that the other movies had as well, you know, like The Witch and The Lighthouse and stuff. When you start looking at it from every other character who's not the main character's point of view.
Right.
You know, like what must their life be like? Like, you know, he's not a particularly horrible. He's probably like one of the more noble portrayals of this type of culture, right? But because of just what he's from and like who his dad was and like what he was raised to believe and what he's told his rights are, he's you know.
And honestly, in retrospect, his uncle's not so bad either. You know, like he
that's
killed
what
his
I'm
dad.
saying.
You know,
he's
like,
certainly not any worse.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. His cousin, the older one, was pretty crappy though.
Sure. Yeah.
That guy deserved to die.
Which one?
The like long haired older one. That was like kind of bossing around the slaves or whatever. And I think he was talking to him after he had won that sort of like field hockey game thing.
Yeah.
He's like, you're going to get some special privileges, but don't think you're any better for it.
Viking Quidditch.
Yeah, Viking Quidditch.
Right. But I mean, even the uncle like had tendencies of like, I mean, because like he was going to go in there and rape Anya Taylor-Joy, you know?
Sure.
Like, so
Yeah.
he's not any better than Ethan Hawke per
That's a good
se.
point.
He's probably just nicer to Nicole Kidman.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's actually kind of maybe, you know, like we look at these things in in Viking times, you know, like it's probably just being human. We've all done stuff we're not proud of, you know, like, I mean, okay, I to a less extent than rape and pillaging, you know, like, but, you know, we can both be good. We have the capacity for good and evil, and we've probably been both at some point, is what I'm saying.
And also, it's just such like, it seems to be such a staple of their society when you go and
Yeah, you take over,
take over a village, you take some for slaves, and then what are those slaves going to do? You're going to rape them. You know, that's just what they did.
Certainly not exclusive to Vikings.
Yeah, that's how.
Right.
I think that's the story of human history.
Yeah, that's how those things happen, right? It's just like normalized.
Yeah,
right?
that's how we're all
And you
related to what is his name? The Mongolian guy.
Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan, yeah. Like supposedly almost everybody has Genghis Khan DNA in him because he just raped and pillaged his way across Asia. Anyways, I did want to call out one other thing. It's kind of changes the subject, unless you guys have something else on that.
Not on rape and pillaging, no.
Good.
No, but let me just ask you this though. It's like, do you think Anya Taylor-Joy's character had any sort of affection for him, or was he just like, why wouldn't she team up with this guy? You know, even though she comes from the village that he had a part in, like ransacking, and then he just jumps on the boat. Because like she's in that scene that you love so much, Chris.
Yeah, she's in the background, and she gets really mad about it.
She tries to stab somebody.
Yeah,
and she's one of the ones that gets put on the boat and shipped out, and then he cuts his hair and then climbs aboard the boat and pretends to be a slave. But like, why would she ever care for this man? It's like his little tribe just got done abducting her and sticking her on a boat and sending her to this hellhole.
I don't think she does. I think there's stuff that happens, like him cutting his hair and becoming a slave for whatever he wants.
But he doesn't do it for any sort of noble reason.
Sure. But I don't know. I feel like that it means he has a dedication as opposed to just raping and pillaging his way across, you know, like haphazardly. He has this one focus. Also, I think, and this is kind of, I'm glad you brought up Anya Taylor-Joy, because one of the thing I was kind of going into is like, she does have this like magic. And one of the things that Robert Eggers does so well is making magic, like, I don't know, realistic magic, you know, that's you're
seeing like what they imagine is happening.
Yeah. It's like magic that you're like, okay, I think that's there, but I'm not sure, you know, and I really like that. So if she has magic, which I really do, this is, I think, the most overt magic in all three of his movies. I think that she does. I think that there's something about his drive that is magic, or that like Odin would be proud of. Does that make sense?
So you think he's getting like help from the gods and stuff? You think all the magic is real, or I don't think it really matters.
Anya Taylor-Joy has magic, and I think she's aiding him.
Well, if she does, then he does too.
Yeah, and I think because of his drive, because of the Norse mythology of what he wants to accomplish, you know, like thousands of years later or whatever, look back and we're like, oh, this is really violent. But I think that's what the gods liked, is that violence, and you know that's why they continue doing it.
Well, that's why they were their gods, because it fit conveniently with their lifestyle.
Sure. and I did like the moment about Christianity, like when he talked about Christianity, like kind of coming.
It's like a dead man on a tree.
Yeah. I did find that interesting, but so I do enjoy that aspect of his movies, and I found it really fascinating in this movie. But I think that she had feelings for him. I think that she grew to have feelings, at least that night that there's that orgy out in the fields and they kind of found each other. Like, she didn't have to find him.
But
it didn't seem like she was being taken against her will.
Right.
No, I don't think so either. But I think her
Or
I mean,
was she just
she's
surviving?
a survivor, just like Nicole Kidman is.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I mean, he's clearly the strongest,
the best option.
Yeah.
like best
Look at his
person, like-
fucking neck muscles.
like-
He's obviously the best.
I remember kind of laughing at a certain point, like whenever he first starts killing people in the town to kind of like torment and psychologically mess with his uncle. And like the people, like clearly what's happened to him has like been done by some like super strong person, because like the bodies are like, I can't remember if it's the first one, but like the bodies are like mangled up and shaped like a horse or
Yeah.
something like that, and clear and like nailed to a wall, and like they're like, who did this? And then you have Alexander Skarsgård standing there in the line of like the biggest, angriest, most tough, murderous looking person, and like they don't even look at him. They don't even like question him harder than anybody else. So it's like, it's kind of clear which one is most capable of that. And there seems to be no suspicion.
That's an easier answer than he did it. Like,
yeah. But anyways, he is clearly like the toughest person around. And I think that what Mike says, you know, she's a survivor, and maybe she has real feelings, but those real feelings are rooted in,
I want to live.
I love surviving. So I love this guy.
I get that. That makes sense. It can be both, I think, to a certain extent.
I don't want to get raped by like every person in this town who's like not a slave.
Yeah.
So I'll make him my little boyfriend. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you know, I don't know if this is maybe too like simplistic of a reading, but I like that in the end when he leaves the boat, he is originally motivated by revenge and saving his mother, and when all that's pulled out, like he ends up going back, but instead of like for revenge and hatred and anger, it's for like love of his like unborn children and family and protection. So it's like all of these negative feelings he's been like harboring and living his life by, he's kind of like gone the other direction and is going back for a bit more of a better reason, you know, than like revenge in the end. So maybe that's typical of revenge films. I don't really recall.
Well, I think that's partly true, but I also think it's not necessarily the right thing, because sending her on a boat to find his kinsman pregnant with twins, maybe all alone in this horrible world that we've seen portrayed, that doesn't necessarily strike me as a very heroic thing. So like while he's going to Valhalla and that's all he's thinking about, thinking he did good.
Oh yeah.
I'm sitting here having the opposite kind of reaction of being like, yeah, but you didn't really, because
where were you most needed?
yeah, like
I get that.
Yeah, cool. I'm glad you got to cut off his head and die in battle, like your dad always wanted, and like men seem to want in this culture. But you know, what about her?
Yeah.
What's she gonna do now?
Yeah. Any excuse to go to Valhalla.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Like you could wait it out, and if he does find you, then you could probably fight him and kill him there. You don't got to do it on a,
yeah. I
in
mean,
a
you're
volcano.
younger than him.
Yeah, he'll be older. You know, it doesn't have to happen around lava.
Yeah.
It can happen wherever.
But if you want to die a glorious death, the gates of hell are about the most metal place you could do it.
That's true. I needed more metal in that scene. Just like metal music.
Yeah. There should have been some soloing.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Please. Just like some Slayer, just like raining blood as they're walking up would be.
Yeah.
Would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, that would have tied the whole scene together and maybe made Chris turn around on it.
I would have loved it.
Maybe.
Then.
Yeah. It might have heightened the masculinity more.
I definitely would have done that.
Oh well. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
One thing. Usually, you know, when we see Viking funerals portrayed on TV, they're followers of Odin, so it's all burned in the water, right? But here we actually see like a tomb buried in the ground, like the boat, instead of sent out and burned, it's just buried.
Yeah.
In the boat, right?
And I've never seen that before, and I thought that was cool.
The Dig, movie with Ray Fiennes and Lily James was in it, and also Carrie, promising young woman, Carrie
Mulligan.
Mulligan, yeah.
I wasn't going to help him. I was thinking
I was trying to think of a silly
suffer
Carrey,
for a minute.
like Jim Carrey.
Yeah, Carrie Ann Moss. No,
Drew Carey?
the whole movie was about digging up a Viking ship in their backyard.
Sweet.
In England, yeah. Spoilers, I guess, for that
That's
movie.
fun.
Ray Fiennes and
there
Drew
you go.
Carey.
I just didn't know that. That's my first. Like I said, no real particular interest in Vikings other than just what I've seen in this movie.
I actually didn't tie that together until you just said that. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Oh, Willem Dafoe's fun here.
Sure.
Yeah.
As always.
Yeah, briefly.
Yeah.
And Ethan Hawke.
Yeah, Ethan Hawke was less out of place than I thought whenever I first heard Ethan Hawke was in this.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Okay.
Agreed.
His neck muscles weren't nearly enough to have birthed the neck muscles on Alexander Skarsgård.
No.
That's all I get.
He had a
Unbelievable.
belly wound.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the exception of Alexander Skarsgård, do you guys think this movie would be better if it was a bunch of like unknown, like, but obviously still really good, like, or lesser known, I guess, like people who aren't Nicole Kidman and Ethan Hawke? And
I think
Willem
Anya
Dafoe?
Taylor-Joy's known less enough that she could still be good in that. It's possible.
I like Nicole Kidman in this role. Like, I think this is one of, like, she gets to really cut loose and remind me of why I like Nicole Kidman in the first place.
Yeah,
But
I like her too.
that said, there is something great about The Witch and like having a bunch of just like, who are these people? Like, I've seen them in Game of Thrones and on like and other stuff, but like they're not Nicole Kidman. You know?
Exactly.
Sure.
And now, and I mean, even going back, Anya Taylor-Joy is her now, but like
She was nobody at the
nobody
time.
at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there is something nice
She was
about
just
that.
this interesting looking girl
Yeah. And
who understood old dialect,
Yeah.
and we were like, what?
yeah, maybe this movie can't be made at the scale that it is.
Yeah,
certainly
I
without
think you
him.
need your Nicole Kidmans and your Ethan Hawkes and your Willem Dafoes to justify the budget.
Yeah. I just think it would have been nice to really like get lost in the world a little bit more and not have,
Without the star power.
yeah.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do? That's not really a valid thing to complain about, I don't think.
I mean, The Lighthouse is kind of similar with William Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, and I got lost in that world, so I'm not sure. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh, well.
All right. So,
Think
anything else?
No, it sounds like that is it.
Go spend your
It does.
$10 on this movie, so hopefully we can see another Robert Eggers movie.
Yeah. I think we only need like 6 to 7 more million people to spend $10 on it to get its money back.
Are we so real quick before we just move completely off the subject here? I think it's dead in the water, but it still might happen. His version of Nosferatu.
Man, I hope it happens. That seems...
Me too.
That's like anything occult and Robert Eggers. I don't know what interview I was listening to. It might have been the Mark Maron one, or there's like a one on the Big Picture podcast I listened to. But he was talking about how he got so into researching like the occult that he was like thinking to himself, he's like, oh, they weren't talking to regular demons. They must have been talking to elemental demons, as if like the demons were real. And he's like, oh, I gotta back up a little bit on this research because anyways, he's so into it that it brings this whole thing to it. So anything occult, I'm in. Anything really. If he does like if his next movie is a modern film, I'd be into it. I don't think he's interested in that though. But
Vampires,
If he does
I like.
Nosferatu, from what I understand, it was supposed to be Willem Dafoe,
again,
which was weird
Again?
because I think of that movie Shadow of the Vampire.
yeah, that was a good movie.
Have 2 Nosferatu credits under his belt.
Yep.
Well, I like vampires, so I'm in on that. More than Vikings.
What about Viking
I don't know. What if
vampires?
it's a really hyper masculine vampire? Would you be turned off?
It's a mixed bag. I'd be neutral, maybe.
Well, we can watch some Anne Rice vampires. They're not hyper masculine, but
No.
I think there's a TV show,
I don't-
Interview
yeah.
with a Vampire.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like hyper masculine vampires might get a little bit into like Lost Boys territory.
I wouldn't call that hyper masculine.
Maybe it's just the saxophone guy. I think. I don't know.
Do you think the saxophone is hyper masculine?
not the instrument, but have you seen The Lost Boys? There's a
It's been a long time.
There's a scene with a I would say hyper masculine man playing the saxophone.
I need to rewatch it just for that now.
Yeah. Anyways,
All right.
That sounds like we're done talking about the Northman.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, and done with this episode, right?
Sounds
Yes.
like it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, listener, for listening. And of course, as always, thanks Jake Wagner Russell for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
All right, stay tuned to this feed. Our next episode should be a casually criterion for 8.5. Or are we not going to do Doctor Strange? I didn't even think about that.
This weekend is not Doctor Strange, so we can do 8.5 next week, and then the weekend after that would be Doctor Strange. I don't think
Well-
Doctor Strange comes out tomorrow, does it? Because we're recording this on Wednesday.
No, it's not even May yet, is it?
Sure
No,
ain't.
next week is May.
It's April 27th
Yeah.
today, as we record.
Okay, so we got more time than I thought.
Yeah.
All right, whatever. Anyway, stay tuned to this feed. Our next episodes will likely be 8.5 and probably Doctor Strange.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening. We will talk to you next time.
Smooth as butter. Bye.
Yeah, bye.